What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're back on the Apex Prime by SABRE, and we are talking about installation because you do have to assemble this blaster yourself, and that proved to be a tad bit challenging, and I'm fairly proficient at building things. So just wanted to do a whole video on my issues and problems and what I had to do to actually assemble this thing. It is functioning great now, had no issues so far. So just wanted to give a video, kind of the issues I had, what you may want to think about before purchasing this to make sure you think you'll be able to put this together. And if you do have one, maybe it'll help you out actually be able to put it together. It is not a build guide, but I do give you some tips and tricks and a review of the installation process. So check it out. All right, so the SABRE arrived today. It's been, man, I've been waiting on this for a while, but super excited to put this thing together. There is definitely some assembly required. You have to assemble the whole thing, which I think is awesome. I enjoy putting blasters together, so I'm really excited to do that. But let's go ahead and open this thing up and see what we got inside. All the parts and bits. Let me just go ahead and throw these out on the table and then go through them. All right, so I got everything in frame as best I could. There are an absolute ton of parts for this blaster, so no, I will not be going through every single one of them because honestly, I don't even know what every single one of them is at this point. But they are gorgeous. This is a 99% fully metal blaster. There's only a few parts that I noticed that were not metal, and that is this piece right here, which feels like Delrin, which is also high quality. I'm not sure what that piece is. And then this is, I think, just like a rest for your hand. So it's probably more comfortable. It's not like a part that, you know, has any wear and tear on it or anything like that. But everything else is fully metal. So this is going to be a really awesome blaster. These are gorgeously blue anodized. We got gold anodized parts. We have, I think these are powder coated. This is black. But yeah, this took forever to get here. I've been waiting on this for months and months, but it has arrived, and it is an expensive blaster, but I think for the quality of it, I think it's going to be worth it. So cannot wait to get this thing together and review it for you guys. So yeah, that'll be quick for you, but time consuming for me. So let's get to work. All right, you guys, so I was in the middle of putting this together. Now I'm not doing an assembly video, but I wanted to point this out because I have an issue, and I don't know if other people have had this issue, but it seems like this piece right here is a little bit out of spec. This is just a little too tight. Now, it says in the directions that this is going to be somewhat of a tight fit, and this one seemed to be a little tight at first, but it goes right in without really any issue. This is the back part that holds the back part of the plunger tube on. That seems to be like a perfect fit, but the front, like it goes in slightly and then it kind of stops, and like it is very, very tight. And unfortunately, I probably could pound it in, but it probably won't come back out. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not even sure. If I pound this in, I'm not even sure it'll go all the way in, and I might just be screwed. So I'm a little worried about that. So I'm still not sure if I'm going to be able to get this to work. I have been in contact with Luke, and he's been very helpful, of course. So I just wanted to show you guys. So this has to go on here, and then you're supposed to have this in here, and then this is supposed to be permanently Loctite with red Loctite permanently attached on here. If I lock that on with that, then I'm not going to be able to get this off or even replace this or fix it or anything. So I was able to figure this out before that Loctite dried, so I was able to get this off. But my point is, if this is super tight like it is, which honestly I don't know why it's so tight, but it's just, I think, a slightly too small. It's going to be very difficult for me to get this in. I'm going to have to pound it with this, like somehow like this. And I just feel like that's dangerous because having it all assembled like this is very strong, but it just seems a little bit dangerous to me to have to do that. And then if it doesn't work, then what do I do? So I'm going to try to sand it out a little bit to make it better, but like it goes in, it's like it wants to go in, but it's not even getting to this grub screw area, and it's supposed to obviously go all the way in. So having some issues trying to figure them out. So I just wanted to let you guys know that if I figure out a solution without having to replace this part, I'll let you know. But I mean, the really only thing I can think of is to sand out the inside a little bit, because this is just way too tight. Like I cannot push it on with force at all. Like it's not going, I mean, I got it a little bit further than this by really pounding at it, but nowhere close to all the way in, and it was very difficult for me to get off. So now it's also stuck in there. So we'll see if I can get it out again. Well, there we go. So yeah, things are not going as smoothly as I hoped, but trying not to damage anything while I try to get this thing put together. But hopefully it all goes together smoothly after I get this figured out. All right, so I've been in communication with Out of Darts, Luke, obviously, and he got in contact with SABRE, and they think that I should go ahead and hammer this guy in. I have sanded that quite a bit. Like, it seems very, very tight from what I have. Now, Luke has tested the ones that he has. He said he tested like 5 of them and he didn't have issues. So I'm assuming that this is just an isolated issue. So hopefully I'm the only one with this problem. But just in case someone else has this issue, that it is extremely tight and you just think that there's no way you're getting this thing in, I would recommend at least sanding this out a little bit and then lubricating it, because it is still very tight. You can see it's starting to wear away some of the, just by me trying to put it in, wear away some of the anodization or powder coating. I'm not sure what this black is, but this is definitely anodized, and that is basically sanded away. So we'll go ahead and try that, but first we obviously have to, well, we have to put this on, and then we have to secure this right here with red Loctite is what they recommend. It makes me nervous because once this is secured permanently and the plunger tube is in, there ain't no going back. So here goes nothing. I think I'm going to wait and let that cure, because I don't want it getting in the plunger tube, because obviously that inside the plunger tube is not going to be good. So I would definitely let that set up if you're doing this before you put your plunger tube in, no matter what the scenario is. But definitely test this with this just to see how tight it is and see if you need to sand that out prior to. I'm hoping I have it sanded out well enough that I can hammer it home. So we'll see what happens. All right, so after doing some sanding and lubricating the inside of that, I was able to put this thing up like this and knock it in with a rubber mallet. I didn't take a ton of force with the rubber mallet after doing that, but I have a feeling it would have been very difficult if I didn't sand it and lubricate it beforehand. Now, it's my understanding that this is an isolated issue with just mine. I think other ones are tight, but they're not as tight as mine. So if you have this issue, I would try that. Nevertheless, we got it in there, we put it together, but if you do that, and if it's that tight, this thing is not coming out. So make sure you have this lined up correctly. This is supposed to be at the bottom, and it is just not something that I feel like I love, that things are so permanent and I can't remove them afterwards. It's something that is concerning to me, but you know, hopefully it won't need to be taken apart ever. So I'm going to keep moving, and I'll let you know if I have any more problems. Okay, you guys, so I got this thing assembled. It is working great. I had to take the barrel off just to keep it in frame, but that is pretty cool. It's actually one of my favorite parts about this blaster is how this attaches. And it allows you to basically use any barrel that there is out there with this blaster. I think that's super cool. But I just wanted to talk about some of the issues I had and kind of the things that I was disappointed about during this process, which I actually really enjoy. Like I said, building blasters, it's fun for me, but I do think instructions are important. So first off, there is a bunch of extra screws that I had left over from this build. there are just lots of different size M4 screws that are these button head screws, and the directions do not tell you ever what size to use, which I found baffling. They told you what type of screw to use, but not what length. And there's like 4 or 5 different lengths of these button screws, and they never tell you what size to use in what places. So I basically put in the sizes, the longest size I could possibly put in. Now, there are 2 that are even shorter than this. I believe they're on these 2 here on the top part of the plunger. I don't know why they're shorter, but they're shorter than the other ones in the main body. And that's this size is what I used. Yeah, those are shorter. There's only 4 of those that they give you, but you could tell that because obviously it didn't sit flush to the blaster. And you're not going to strip anything out like you would with a Nerf blaster because it's metal. It's not going to let you screw it in any further. So you should be able to tell if it's too long of a bolt. But you could possibly put too short of a bolt in. And so I would just recommend trying to use the longest bolt you can. You should have plenty to choose from. If you do need to use a longer, you put a long bolt in somewhere and you think that it would be better suited somewhere else, you can always switch it. I also secured all these with blue Loctite, so it should not come out and everything should stay tight. I think that would be recommended for a lot of parts. Bradley recommended that in his build video, and I would highly recommend using that because the directions they give you with this, which is a file, they don't give you any sort of written, you get no paperwork when you get this blaster, which I thought was kind of weird. I mean, you'd think you would at least get like a materials list kind of dictating telling you what sizes are what, something like that, or how many, things are used and maybe how many extras you have since you do have so many extras, but no paperwork at all with the blaster. Everything is digital. I had some issues downloading that digital file on my computer, but I think that was more of my computer issue because I was able to get it done through my wife's computer, but nevertheless, thought that was a little strange, just the way you had to download the directions, and it wasn't a standard kind of file, I guess. But the directions are not even complete. It doesn't even tell you how to completely finish this blaster, which is crazy because you think you need directions that are, the directions not only not detailed, they don't tell you how to complete your blaster fully. They don't tell you how to put the spring in, which is pretty straightforward. And honestly, if you're used to putting blasters together, you're going to know how to do that. You just put the spring in and you screw this in. I don't think they even told me how to put the barrel on. They don't tell you what length this needs to be from here, but you can just gauge that, obviously. And then I probably will mark, once I decide what barrels I'm going to use with this, I'll probably mark the barrel so then I can just put this back on with the grub screws quickly, and I won't have to measure it every time. That was a little strange to me. A lot of people aren't as good about, building things as I am, or a lot of us are, because if this is like your first blaster that you've ever built, you're probably going to have a hard time. And honestly, this isn't really a hard blaster to put together. So it should be easy if you just have good instructions. So I just didn't really understand why the instructions were poor like that. Other things I did, besides obviously the issues I've already documented with the plunger tube, that's that notch that I pointed out that has to be at the bottom, that had some burrs on it. So I filed that around all those edges internally before putting the plunger head in and lubricating it and all that, just to make sure that it doesn't cut the O-ring or anything like that. So definitely check that when you're assembling your blaster. And then I also put some lubricant on these bearings, which I'm assuming you'd want to do because bearings need lubricant, and it's some sort of maintenance that you should do to your blaster periodically, just the same as you would lubricate bearings on your 3D printer or whatever to keep them moving well. You should do that. They didn't give us any lubricant for these. I used a 3-in-1 lubricant. I'll put a link in the description to what I used, and it's the same thing I use for my 3D printer. I'm sure there's a lot of different lubricants you can use for that, but you'd think Sabre would maybe recommend something. No, they don't recommend anything. They also don't give you any lubricant for your plunger tube. So I guess you can just use whatever you want. Most people have lubricant if they have blasters, but like I said, some people, this might be their first Nerf blaster and they don't have lubricant. So you can buy slug slime from out of darts. That's what I like. It's a very thin lubricant. I prefer that for my builds now. That is definitely my go-to. And yeah, everything else I think went pretty well. Sometimes the sheet metal piece here, the main body part of the blaster, you couldn't tighten down all the screws at the before you got certain other screws in, so you kind of had to loosen up screws and you know, and get things tight, especially around the magwell area, just to get everything to line up properly, because there's a little bit of bend and flex in this. So you just got to make sure you get everything lined up properly, and so you may have to loosen up some bolts. You can't just tighten them down and then go on to the next thing. You kind of have to leave them loose until the end. I think that's, you should be able to figure out pretty well, but like I said, it would be nice to have that in some sort of instruction. One thing that I didn't mention is I have an AR grip on here, but Out of Darts sells, I believe, an airsoft grip. And if you're not in the States, you might not be using a real steel grip. So you will need these plates right here. But once again, they give you screws that don't seat fully into this piece. And I thought that was really strange, because that should be pretty simple to have the recess in the plate here be the right size to fit the screw. But it's not, and this sticks out, and then that grip will not fit on without modification. So yeah, you'll have to Dremel out your grip or find screws that actually fit into these recesses. So yeah, that's a little weird to me. I don't know why that is. One other thing that was different, that I remember different, at least from my build than what Bradley did, and what the directions say, is I actually had to use the button head screws in the top here, because the screws that came with the rail, these black ones here, are not long enough. Think about that when you're putting this in. Obviously the screws need to, once again, need to be long enough to get to that rail and lock this on tight. So I just used the button head screws. I think the black ones would have worked in these, but they wouldn't work in the front and the back for whatever reason. Also strange that they just didn't make one long rail that didn't butt in the middle right here. I think that's just a weird choice. You know, those are all things that were a little strange to me. Hopefully this video helped you guys. Hopefully you don't have the issues I had, and hopefully the instructions will be improved from what they are now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video along with the review video, and we will also have a testing video of this thing coming out soon, where I'm going to test a lot of different barrels and a bunch of different spring options. And then I don't know what else we're going to do with this blaster, but this thing is awesome. I love it. It is rock solid. It is a very heavy blaster, coming in about just under 7 pounds. So that is not light, and that's going to take some getting used to, but that's what you get when you have a aluminum and steel blaster. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and as always, peace out.